Imagine moving into what you think is your dream home, a quiet neighborhood, a fresh start. But what if I told you that someone was already there, watching, waiting? This is a chilling true story from Reddit about a couple who discovered something horrifying in their attic. Mark and Sarah had just moved into an old but charming house in a peaceful neighborhood. The kind of place where people smiled at each other on the street, where families had lived for generations. They were excited to start their new life together, thinking they had finally found a home that felt just right. But from the very first night, something felt off. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. She brushed it off as nerves, the stress of unpacking, the unfamiliar creaks of an old house settling. But as days turned into weeks, small things started happening that she just couldn't ignore. Food would go missing from the fridge, only a little at a time, just enough to make her doubt herself. Sometimes, she'd come back to a room she knew she had tidied, only to find objects slightly out of place. And then, there was the smell. A damp, musty odor that seemed to drift through the house, sometimes strong, sometimes barely there. Mark reassured her that it was just the house's old ventilation or maybe something in the walls. He laughed it off, telling her she was overthinking things. But Sarah wasn't so sure. One night, long after Mark had fallen asleep, Sarah was tossing and turning, unable to rest. That was when she heard it. A faint rustling sound. At first, she thought it was coming from outside. Maybe a raccoon or the wind through the trees. But then, as she lay there holding her breath, she realized it was coming from above them. From the attic. Her blood ran cold. She gently shook Mark awake, whispering that she had heard something. He groggily dismissed her at first, mumbling something about the house settling. But then, they both heard it. A soft but deliberate shuffling sound, like someone moving. Mark's expression changed instantly. He sat up, listening intently. They waited in silence, their hearts pounding. And then, the noise stopped. Mark, now fully awake and on high alert, decided to check it out. Grabbing the flashlight from the bedside drawer, he cautiously made his way to the attic ladder. Sarah stayed behind, gripping the edge of the bed, every nerve in her body on edge. The ladder creaked under Mark's weight as he climbed. He hesitated for a moment before pushing open the attic hatch. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, and then, he saw it. A pair of wild, sunken eyes staring back at him. A man, thin, disheveled, his clothes hanging off his frail frame, was crouched in the corner, watching Mark with an eerie stillness. Mark froze, his breath caught in his throat. The stranger didn't move. He just stared, his face half hidden in the shadows, his lips slightly parted as if he had been caught in the middle of a thought. Mark's mind raced. Who was he? How did he get in? How long had he been there? That's when he noticed the makeshift bed in the corner. Old blankets, empty food wrappers, and a notebook. The stranger suddenly lunged forward, but Mark stumbled back, his heart slamming against his ribs. He nearly fell off the ladder as he scrambled down, yelling for Sarah to call the police. The police arrived within minutes, storming the house and dragging the intruder out of the attic. He didn't resist. He just muttered to himself, eyes darting around as if he were in a different world. As they searched the attic, the officers found the notebook. And what they found inside made Sarah's stomach turn. Pages upon pages filled with notes, detailed records of their daily routines. What time they woke up. What time Sarah took a shower. What time Mark left for work. Even notes about them sleeping. One entry read, "She sleeps on her right side. He snores sometimes." "The house gets quiet at 2:13 a.m. Another said, "She hums when she makes coffee. She doesn't know I'm watching." And then, one final entry, "Soon." Mark and Sarah were horrified. The police later determined that the man had been living there for weeks, sneaking out at night to eat their food, to move around their house while they slept, to watch them. The worst part? No one knew how long he had been watching them before they moved in. Sarah couldn't shake the thought that, even before they unpacked their boxes, someone had already been living in their home. Silent. Hidden. Waiting. They moved out immediately. Because some nightmares don't end when you wake up. So, next time you hear a strange sound in your house, don't be so quick to dismiss it. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't the ones in our nightmares. They're the ones watching, silently, from the shadows. And remember, stay safe, because you never know who might be watching. Imagine moving into a new apartment, thinking you're finally alone in your own space. But what if you weren't? What if someone else had been living there all along, hidden in the shadows, watching you, eating your food, even sleeping just a few feet away from you? This is the terrifying true story of Haruka, a young woman in Tokyo, who discovered she was never truly alone. Haruka had always dreamed of living in Tokyo. After months of searching, she finally found the perfect apartment. It was surprisingly affordable for such a prime location, and though the building was a little old, the place was spacious and well-lit. It almost seemed too good to be true. Excited about her new life, she quickly moved in and decorated the space to feel like home. The first few weeks were normal. She worked long hours at her job and would come home exhausted. At night, she'd unwind by watching TV or scrolling through her phone before going to bed. Everything seemed fine, until the noises started. At first, they were subtle, just faint rustling sounds in the kitchen, almost like a plastic bag shifting. She dismissed it as the building settling or maybe a rat scurrying around. But then, strange things began happening. Her food started disappearing. A carton of milk she swore she had barely touched was now nearly empty. A loaf of bread was missing slices. Even some snacks she kept in a drawer were suddenly gone. She started second-guessing herself. Was she really eating more than she thought? Maybe she had been too tired to remember. Then, one night, things escalated. She woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of soft footsteps. Not outside. Inside her apartment. Her heart pounded. She held her breath, listening intently. The footsteps stopped, followed by the faint creak of a door closing. Gathering her courage, she tiptoed to the kitchen, gripping her phone in case she needed to call for help. But there was nothing. The fridge was slightly ajar, but no one was there. Her apartment was locked from the inside. There was no sign of a break-in. Haruka was rattled but tried to brush it off as exhaustion playing tricks on her mind. Yet, the uneasy feeling lingered. Determined to find out what was happening, she decided to set up a hidden camera in her kitchen the next night. She placed it carefully, ensuring it covered the entire space. If there really was a rat, or something worse, she would finally catch it. The following morning, she eagerly grabbed her phone to check the footage. But as she watched, her breath caught in her throat. The footage showed her kitchen, dark and empty, for most of the night. Then, at around 2 a.m., movement. The cupboard above her fridge slowly opened from the inside. A pale, frail woman with stringy hair emerged, moving cautiously, her eyes darting around the apartment. She lowered herself onto the counter, then onto the floor, moving as if she had done this many times before. Haruka's stomach twisted as she continued watching. The woman walked straight to the fridge, opened it, and began eating her food. She drank milk straight from the carton, then rummaged through drawers as if she owned the place. After finishing, she crept to the living room and sat on Haruka's couch. She turned on the TV but kept the volume on mute. She sat there, watching, for nearly an hour. In Haruka's home, just a few feet away from where she was sleeping. Before dawn, the woman stood up, stretched, and silently crept back to the kitchen. She climbed onto the counter, then hoisted herself into the cupboard, pulling the door shut behind her as if she had never been there at all. Haruka's hands trembled as she watched the video. She could barely breathe. This woman had been living in her apartment, possibly for months, maybe longer. Without a second thought, Haruka grabbed her phone and bolted out of the apartment. She stood shaking in the hallway as she called the police, her mind racing with terror. How long had this woman been there? Had she been watching her every night? Had she ever stood by her bed while she slept? The police arrived within minutes. When they opened the cupboard, they found a thin, middle-aged woman curled up inside. She was homeless and had apparently been living in the apartment for over a year, long before Haruka had moved in. She had managed to survive by sneaking out at night, eating whatever she could, and staying completely silent during the day. The police later revealed that this wasn't the first case like this in Japan. In some instances, former tenants never really leave. They hide in crawl spaces, attics, or cupboards, unnoticed by the new residents. They live there, in secret, right under their noses. Haruka moved out immediately. She never returned to that apartment, and to this day, she can't shake the feeling that she was never truly alone. If you ever move into a new place, check your cupboards. You never know who might already be living there.